Hello there and welcome. My name is Julie Hirschberg. I'm a neurologic physical therapist. If we haven't met, I am the owner and founder of Reactive Therapy and Wellness here in the Los Angeles area, and joining you like I do every week to share a bit about what I've been reading, what I've been learning, and I'm putting that all together for you. And one of those things I have been learning about myself is that I can indeed walk and talk. So I got a new treadmill to go with a standing desk, and I've been using it all week and absolutely love it. And one of my very good friends, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. So if you're visually sensitive, you can just listen because I'll be moving. So I got this for my birthday last week, and I have been using it every day. I feel so much better because I love to move. And one of my good friends and colleague, who you've heard me talk about before, Mike Studer, is almost always on his treadmill desk. So when I'm meeting with him, he's on his treadmill desk. When he's presenting, sometimes he's on his treadmill desk. And I just thought, you know what, today I'm going to do my live from my treadmill desk. So here I am on my treadmill desk doing my live, and actually I promise this has something to do with neuroplasticity actually. So I have been obsessed with neuroplasticity since becoming a physical therapist. When I graduated from PT school in 2002, actually, this was the decade of the brain was just coming on us. There was a lot of exciting things happening in our understanding of neuroplasticity. And I dove right in. I was like, this is so exciting. We can help people change their brains. There's evidence that what we do in therapy actually makes brain changes. This is awesome. And that is still very much the case. But our understanding has continued to evolve. And luckily, I, as a therapist, have evolved, and I am different than I was 20 years ago. So I wanted to share some of those insights with you, and starting with one of the seminal articles in the early 2000s on neuroplasticity. So let me just share this with you. If you are a therapist, you likely read this article, and it was like your neuroplasticity Bible. It was called Principles of Experience Dependent Neuroplasticity, Implications for Rehabilitation After Brain Damage. Kleim and Jones are the authors here. And one of the things that they put in this really nice summary of literature that led to these principles was key neuroplastic principles. So I want to share these with you. So let me grab this. Oh, and they're tiny. But again, if you're a therapist, you likely have these memorized because they were a part of, I feel like this was a part of growing up as a therapist, were these neuroplasticity principles. So use it or lose it, use it or improve it, train specifically, intensity matters, repetition matters. And I actually want to kind of hone in on those two principles for a moment, because when this was 2006, 7, 8, for a 5-year span, I ran a site for a clinical trial that was based on these principles of repetition and intensity and specificity. It was a trial for people post-stroke to improve their walking. And we walked, and we walked intensely with a body weight supported treadmill training, and compared that actually to a home program group of strengthening. And I was part of this trial for 5 years, and I really truly believed, and actually it's true, we made a difference in people's lives with this very repetitious training. It's not a bad thing, but we've just learned now that there's more to it. And it turns out, even from that study, the control group was a home program group. Both groups improved. So this intense repetition locomotor training, the group, this was a trial post-stroke, by the way, they improved at the same rate as somebody doing a lot less intense of locomotor training or walking exercise. So that's interesting, right? That wasn't expected. And there's probably lots of reasons why. But that had me questioning principles of neuroplasticity for sure. And, you know, I actually had the great privilege to treat people in both of the groups and realize, yeah, everybody's getting better. Why is that? What is it about the therapy? And I actually think this is where neuroplasticity and our understanding of it has had to evolve. It's more than just repetition. It's more than just intensity. And as, again, my favorite person who also likes to walk and talk on treadmills, like I am today, Mike Studer, says it's also about making, not just doing repetitions, but making them meaningful. And I shared, actually, I see Jenna here on this live. Jenna's one of our amazing OTs. I think occupational therapists are the true winners of making movement meaningful. And I've learned a lot from OTs. Everybody knows, like, I love OTs more than anything else. But my great colleague and friend Mike Studer has really shared a lot on this topic. And I'm going to stop sharing this. And so I want to talk about this idea of making movement meaningful and some of those other things that we now understand go in to neuroplasticity. So let me come and grab, I shared this diagram. I was kind of reminded of this diagram. I created this diagram with Brittany Kim for a weekend course we taught on neuroplasticity, basically cultivating central nervous system connectivity. And I'm preparing for another talk, and one of the other therapists I'm working with, she's like, don't you have this cool diagram with the brain and the soil? And I was like, yes, I do. And I kind of forgotten about it. So brought it back out this week because it goes through those other key pieces that we need for neuroplasticity, besides the repetition, besides the intensity. What if instead we could make each repetition more meaningful? Could we actually unleash more neuroplasticity with less reps? Possibly. What if we could dose and choose the right dual task? So for example, right now, walking at my treadmill desk. What is that walking at my treadmill desk? Definitely a dual task to be able to talk here and walk at my treadmill desk. What does that afford me? It actually affords me to walk without thinking about it, right? So I have some automatic movement occurring in my legs. And for me, actually, the rhythmic walking is really soothing for my autonomic nervous system. So this, what we've learned so much in the last few years, is that also what we feed the nervous system, like the autonomic nervous system, is so important in what we might see as an output from a neuroplasticity standpoint. So let's talk about this. What exactly is neuroplasticity? And there's actually, I'm going to pull up the exact quote. Hopefully I have it right here in front of me. By the way, the paper, the 2008 paper, Principles of Experience-Dependent Neuroplasticity, is available, free full text. So I'm going to include it in our newsletter this week. If you're already on our newsletter, you'll get that here, along with some of the other things I'm going to share. And then if you're not, you can join us, healthcare providers at reactiveeducation.com and people with neurologic disorders at reactivept.com. So I actually really love the definition of neuroplasticity from this article. So neuroplasticity is the mechanism by which the brain encodes experience and learns new behaviors. It is also the mechanism by which the damaged brain relearns lost behavior in response to rehabilitation. So as a rehab professional, neuroplasticity is everything. So how do we foster that? We know in rehab, part of that is practice. How we're walking, how we're moving, how we're even breathing, absolutely. But we also can influence the brain by many other things. So in this analogy, this gardening analogy for the brain, if we want the brain to flourish neuroplasticity wise, we've got to think of these other factors like the weather. What is the environmental context? What's the culture, social, physical context? We know those are shaped by the environment that we live in, the family we're with, friends, even where we live and our access to outdoor areas to walk, for example. Also, what we know about our brain and how it predicts things, our beliefs and our perceptions are so very important. What do we believe that is possible for our capabilities, for our movement, for our function, and how we might improve or change? That directly influences neuroplasticity. So that's the weather up at top. Also have this little watering, right? So watering, we can think of those sensory experiences and just the right amount. So for some people, too much sensory experience, sound and light and visual motion and activity, like you watching me here right now, walking while talking, it might be too much, right? That's not going to drive positive neuroplasticity for you. For other people, they actually need more sensory input. And so more sensory input might be what a person needs. This, by the way, are you noticing this? Not a one size fits all for neuroplasticity. This is really requires an individual understanding what their nervous system needs to drive change. And that's why I think a rehab professional is so important. So we talked about weather, we talked about watering, sensory information. Let's talk about pruning. And I think this is what people really think of with neuroplasticity. It's almost like a pruning, and it truly is. Let's reinforce some positive connections and undo aberrant connections. A really good example is when somebody's had a stroke, they may develop compensation. So right after the stroke, experiencing a lot of weakness, they may develop a compensatory pattern of walking just so they can make it to the bathroom, just so they could get out of the hospital, and just so they could get home. But that pattern actually doesn't serve the person in the long run. And so in therapy, we may be pruning and undoing that compensation and improving a different pattern and laying down that pattern with practice. So that would be an example of pruning. Another example is that maybe somebody with Parkinson's experiences tremor in a social situation and it increases. Well, we might look at that and go, well, how did that develop and how did that occur? And how can we reinforce a more calming, soothing, more parasympathetic, I would even say, from an autonomic term, state in the nervous system so that person maybe doesn't experience tremor in a social situation. So we'll reinforce those positive connections and undo aberrant connections. Pruning. I think that's commonly understood in neuroplasticity, but what about these other pieces? I think the soil is actually one of the biggest pieces. How can you grow good connections if your soil is not optimized? If you're a gardener, you know what I'm talking about. But in the nervous system, things like your systemic health, so your immune function, cardiac function, nutrition, sleep. I find that when people have optimized their sleep and are getting more quality sleep, they can improve some of their nervous system connections. a sense of safety, their arousal level, emotional health, also real key to making neuroplastic changes. Even an overall fitness level. We actually know that fitness and movement and activity can increase blood flow to the brain. Increased blood flow to the brain also can help build that substrate for neuroplasticity. Increased blood flow in itself doesn't create neuroplasticity, but do that and add in these other pieces, absolutely. Now, the other piece of this picture is the compost. So it might be also that we need to build additional resources so the person can truly participate in a rehab to drive brain change. So maybe they need more strength, maybe more flexibility to do certain activities. We also have to add that resource in. It's kind of part of our soil so that we can make those brain changes. So what I think is so important here is that this is way beyond just practice. It's how you practice. It's the soil that you practice in. It's the sensory, it's the environment, the beliefs in which you practice in. It's so much more than what we understood 20 years ago for neuroplasticity. And it's really, what I kind of think of it as is like, if you married these like Kleim and Jones seminal article on neuroplasticity, if you married that with becoming really psychologically informed as a therapist, you would have the perfect, it's like the match made in heaven of neuro rehab. You would have that mix to really help people make it to the next level of neuroplastic changes as a healthcare provider. Now, I really believe that perfect marriage, the most that I have learned about it has come from my good friend and colleague, Mike Studer. He brings those pieces together in neuroplasticity. That's the course that he teaches at Reactive. We're on our 5th year. I've learned so much from it. And he often teaches it, by the way, while walking at his treadmill desk. He's a master of dual tasking. But his course is coming up this year in March, but our early bird expires next week. So I wanted to remind you, go get it. If you're a healthcare provider, Neuroplasticity 5.0, it is at reactiveeducation.com/MP5. If you want to go right there. But really learn this like marriage, the marriage of those neuroplasticity principles with psychological understanding, behavioral economics, really understanding the person in front of you and applying that to their treatment in the most complex cases. So if you're a healthcare provider, I hope you'll join us. And then I will send out, again, these articles that I talked about today to our newsletter list. If you're a healthcare provider, reactiveeducation.com. And if you are a person with a neurologic disorder, reactivept.com. Either way, thank you for joining me today. Here, I'll stop sharing my my picture here. Oh, I shared another table. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for putting up with me walking on my new treadmill desk today. I'm having so much fun with it. And I hope you have a really great day. And I will see you later. Thanks so much.